Let me share the moment a 47-year partnership came to an end, not through conflict, not through scandal, but with a single name. Eala, ranked 31st globally, 20 years old from Quezon City, Philippines, and right now, the exclusive commercial focus of the most historically devoted automotive sponsor women's tennis has ever witnessed. Every dollar, every resource, every ounce of prestige that Porsche once distributed across an entire sport redirected to a single individual. WTA officials are livid. And I want to break down exactly why. Because the story beneath this headline is far larger than a sponsorship announcement. Let's start with 1978. A 15-year-old named Tracy Austin arrived in Feildstadt, Germany. Pigtails, braces, and a quiet intensity that silenced everyone in the room. Porsche was there, and something clicked that day that would endure for nearly 50 years. 4 to 7 consecutive years. That wasn't a business deal. That was a marriage. Through Navratilova's dominance, Hingis' brilliance, Sharapova's flair, Kerber's steady grit, and Svitolina's 5 Grand Slam titles. Through every era, every controversy, every commercial challenge, Porsche didn't waver, they remained. The Porsche Tennis Grand Prix in Stuttgart became Europe's oldest professional women's indoor tournament. When they relocated it to the Porsche Arena in 2006, they literally put their name on the venue. Players voted it their favorite tournament in its category 10 separate times between 2007 and 2019. 33,000 spectators filled that arena in 2025, the largest attendance since the pandemic. Porsche operated the Porsche Talent Team. They donated €100 per ace to Stuttgart children's charities. They had Emma Raducanu as a brand ambassador, Angelique Kerber. They cultivated something authentic, organic, profound, and genuine. When Arina Sabalenka entered a Stuttgart press conference and said, "I want to finally win the Porsche this year," it felt like a personal declaration, not a sponsor line. That's what 47 years of investment looks like. And then December 2025 arrived. Mercedes-Benz entered the scene. What they announced wasn't just a sponsorship. It was the largest single commitment in the documented history of women's professional sport. Starting January 1, 2026, the WTA Tour officially became the WTA Tour driven by Mercedes-Benz. Title partner, global exclusivity, net post signage at every tournament worldwide. Porsche, the brand that had built women's tennis' most iconic partnership, suddenly found itself boxed in. Technically, they were protected. Tournaments with existing automotive deals could maintain them. Stuttgart was Porsche's tournament. They had organized it, funded it, and named the arena. Mercedes couldn't interfere with that. But the broader identity, the most loyal sponsor in women's tennis designation, they literally carried on their website that belonged to the whole tour. And now the whole tour wore a 3-point star. 3 sources familiar with the internal negotiations confirmed that Mercedes' deal included clauses to eventually buy out Porsche's secondary partnerships at WTA 250 and 500 level events. The timeline was deliberately vague. The tension was not. So Porsche made a decision, not a defensive one, not a reluctant retreat, but a pivot executed with the kind of speed that separates brands who build legacies from brands who merely participate in them. And the focus of that pivot? A Philippine passport. 1 week before the announcement that shook the tennis world, Tennis 365 published an industry analysis. One line reads like a prophecy now: Eala has yet to win a WTA title. She hasn't broken into the top 20, but there's a big reason why she may already be the most attractive option for sponsors. Not the most appealing choice among players her age. Not the most interesting rising Asian star. The most attractive option. Full stop. Across all categories, all sports, all demographics, Porsche's commercial team had been reading the same reports. They reached out to her management through channels described as architecturally flattering, as if whoever designed the approach had studied every previous negotiation surrounding her and engineered it specifically to avoid every friction point those conversations had faced. They weren't trying to compete with Nike's apparel territory. They weren't stepping on Babolat's equipment deal. They weren't crowding Globe Telecom, BPI, Locally Juice, or the Milo partnership that had launched on February 22 at SM Mega Mall, where Milo Philippines VP of Marketing described Eala as embodying a powerful full-circle story and their brand's most complete expression of its champion development philosophy. Porsche existed in a completely different universe. Automotive prestige, lifestyle aspiration, European heritage fused with performance engineering. The exact intersection of speed, elegance, and competitive ferocity that had defined their identity since Ferry Porsche built the first 356 Roadster in an Austrian sawmill in 1948. No one else was in that territory. No one else could be. And the number they put on the table, $200 million structured over a decade, encompassing brand ambassador duties, a lifestyle collection, fragrance development, and a dedicated Southeast Asian market campaign. The largest individual athlete investment in Porsche's corporate history by a wide margin. Emma Raducanu had been an ambassador. Angelique Kerber had been an ambassador. Neither arrangement came close to this. All of it focused on one 20-year-old woman from Quezon City. When WTA leadership learned what was coming, the reaction wasn't polite concern. It was fury. And here's why. The anger wasn't just about losing Porsche. It was about what Porsche's choice suggested about the WTA's commercial value. Consider the timing. Mercedes had just delivered the largest sponsorship in women's sports history. Billie Jean King herself called it transformative at the ceremony in Stuttgart. The WTA had spent decades arguing that institutional investment, not individual star power, was what deserved commercial recognition. That argument had finally produced a record-breaking result. And then Porsche stood up and said, with its wallet rather than its words, the institution isn't the product. The human being is the product. WTA officials who had built careers on the collective investment argument watched Porsche redirect 47 years of women's tennis identity away from the tour and toward one player. The concern was about precedent. If Porsche could do this, what would stop every other institutional partner from following suit? Why invest in the tour when you could invest in the athlete? Why fund the framework when its commercial value derives entirely from the stars competing within it? The fury was also personal. The narrative was commercially accurate, and that accuracy made it infuriating. Strip away the anger, the commercial conflicts, the WTA officials staring at their phones at 7 a.m. watching their professional morning rewrite itself in real time. What remains is a girl from Quezon City who began 2025 ranked 140th globally. She ended it ranked 50th. With her first WTA title from Guadalajara, her first Grand Slam main draw victory at the US Open, her first top-level final from Eastbourne, and a year-end reflection she posted not as a victory lap, but as a love letter to her family, her team, her supporters, and baby Alex, the little girl who made the monumental choice that made the woman possible. By February 23, 2026, she had reached a career high of 31. She had just beaten Jasmine Paolini, world number 7, in Dubai, her fourth top 10 victory, a pace the WTA described as historically premature for her ranking. She represented the Philippines at the 2025 KVA Games in Thailand, winning gold in women's singles, bronze in mixed doubles and team events. She led Team Philippines to a 5-0 sweep in the Billie Jean King Cup, personally undefeated, securing a promotion the Philippine Tennis Federation called a generational milestone. Vogue Philippines cover, Tatler Philippines cover, Globe Telecom signed her at age 8, Babolat, Nike since 2019, who for her Wimbledon debut commissioned a Sagitata hair tie, a national flower accessory because someone understood her cultural identity specifically enough to make that gesture rather than a generic branding moment. She competed in Milo Sports Clinics as a child and returned as their ambassador in 2026, not as a commercial transaction, but as the living fulfillment of what that program was meant to produce. Vera Files and Rappler spent months fact-checking fabricated sponsorship stories about her because her community's emotional investment in her recognition consistently outpaced what verified commercial reality had yet delivered. People were inventing fake sponsorships because the real ones felt too small for what she was becoming. Gigi Salmon, Sky Sports lead presenter, said it plainly at a London tennis industry event. In terms of her appeal and the crowds that follow her, she might already be the biggest star. Coco Gauff, reigning Grand Slam champion, whose commercial portfolio is one of the most sophisticated in women's sports, publicly referenced the Fedra phenomenon. When you play a certain type of star, part of the crowd isn't just coming to see you. Porsche cited these observations in their internal justification documents. They cited the 33,000 people in the Porsche arena in 2025. They cited Southeast Asia's luxury market trajectory. They cited the verified reality that misinformation thrives around Eala and recognized that a fan community producing viral fake endorsement stories at that volume represented a commercial intensity no manufactured campaign could ever match. Sky Sports, Coco Gauff, Tennis 365, Porsche's own analysts, they all arrived at the same conclusion through different paths, and Porsche acted. What they purchased wasn't an already documented achievement. It was an achievement still unfolding. The WTA officials, furious about the pivot, had every structural reason for their anger. Major brands require partner alignment. The Mercedes arrangement demanded a coherent ecosystem for projected returns. Their concerns were legitimate, professionally grounded, and entirely beside the point of what Porsche actually chose. At its core, this decision had nothing to do with Mercedes, commercial frameworks, title partner exclusivity, or the protected status of Stuttgart Arena. It had to do with a 20-year-old who told cameras in Dubai, "How many people would love to be in my position? I make it a point every day to give my all and be grateful for what I have." It had to do with the girl who said at Indian Wells, with quiet authority, "I know that I belong here." It had to do with the athlete who described her entire breakthrough year not as a commercial triumph or professional validation, but as a love letter. Porsche didn't abandon women's tennis. They relocated their investment from an institution to a human being and chose the human being whose story fully justified that relocation. The officials upset about the decision were arguing about frameworks. Porsche was arguing about something older, more enduring, and ultimately more powerful than any framework the WTA has ever created. So here's the question I'm leaving you with. When Porsche walks away from 47 years of institutional loyalty to bet everything on one 20-year-old from the Philippines, is that the most commercially rational decision in women's sports sponsorship history? Or are they simply the first powerful entity willing to admit what everyone watching Eala already knew? Some athletes don't belong to institutions, some athletes transcend them, and once you recognize one, everything else becomes secondary? Drop your answer below. Because when we revisit this story in 5 years, it will either look like genius or confirmation of something even more extraordinary. If you want, I can also tighten it further for readability while keeping the exact flow and all details. This would make it feel more like a high-end sports documentary narration.